go ahead and get started here. Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you
Denise.
very much.
Thanks.
And welcome to the Canyon City Energy Franchise Committee meeting of November 14th, 2022. I'm here, John Hamrick. Carol Dunn is here. Doug Cohn is not here. Will probably be a little bit late. Kirk Souther will not be here. Emily Tracy is here. Kathy Worthington is here. Steve Andrews and John Behill are here. And we have Dr. David Munoz online. And with that, we'll just go right into the presentation. We're a little bit tardy getting started with some technical difficulties, but Emily, you want to do some introductions?
Okay, so no old business before that then, Bob. Okay, great. Thanks. We're fortunate to have Dr. David Munoz with us. He sent me a little bit of and good morning. He sent me a bit of, I'll go ahead and read that. I think it's helpful to know his background. He lives in Taos. He spent the majority of his professional career at 1986 to 2012 as a faculty member with the Colorado School of Mines Engineering Division. While at Mines, he spent a one-year sabbatical as visiting professor to Monterrey Tech in Monterrey, Mexico in the mid-90s, and a second sabbatical as lead technical analyst on a U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Transit Administration funded project to consider 300-kilometer-long high-speed maglev transportation system to alleviate traffic problems along the I-70 Colorado Mountain Corridor. He also served as CSM Engineering Division Director, School of Mines in the early 2000s. In addition to teaching numerous undergraduate and graduate courses in the thermal fluid sciences, he has advised hundreds of engineering students on design, build, and research projects on topics ranging from hybrid electric vehicle design and implementation to potable water systems in Honduras and Uganda. Dr. Munoz introduced a course in 2004 entitled Sustainable Engineering Design, incorporating the use of life cycle assessment into the engineering design process. He served as the director of the Humanitarian Engineering Minor Program, the objective of which was to prepare students interested in using their engineering skills to develop positive working relationships through service learning with the economically poor. He served as a member of the Fetzer Institute's Engineering Advisory Council for 6 years to explore the possibilities of incorporating the power of love and forgiveness into engineering practice. He earned his PhD and MS degrees from Purdue and BS from the University of New Mexico, all degrees in mechanical engineering. He lives in Taos, as I mentioned, in an energy efficient home of his design, where he serves on the board of Renewable Taos, Inc., a nonprofit that promotes the transition to 100% renewable energy in the local and surrounding communities of northern New Mexico. He also serves as treasurer to the Los Lobatos Acequia, I hope I said that right, Acequia Association, with records dating to the year 1715, and on the board of Taos Valley Acequia Association. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate the presentation you're going to provide to us, and you've sent some additional information that's, I think, the committee has not had access to yet this morning, Dr. Munoz, but jump right in and we'll go with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. I'm sorry it was so long. I probably should have cut it back a little bit. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I want to share a screen, if that's okay.
Should work.
Let's see. How do I?
See if your share works. Oh, it looks like it's working.
Cool.
There.
We're good. I hate to trust myself with any technology.
Can you all see that? That's the first page of my presentation.
Yes.
We can.
Okay, great. So I sent you this presentation along with, I actually cut and paste one-page document that provides a timeline of the Kit Carson experience. And I guess you've already spoken with Luis Reyes, so we can probably get through that pretty quickly. But I think it was a little bit different than the one-pager, I think, Emily, that you sent me now a few months back. So I did want to go over those things again, because there were some things missing.
Clarify, Dr. Munoz, as a committee, we have not spoken with Luis Reyes.
Oh, you haven't? I thought you had. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, good. This is going to be new stuff to you. I was able to pass this by him for accuracy, and so he got back with me, and so I feel pretty confident in the history. So I'm going to go back to about 2010, when Kit Carson, that was during the Obama administration. There was some money available through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and they were able to secure a federal loan grant of 64 million to construct communications fiber. This is fiber optics network across the service area, which I thought was, pretty astounding. Back then, I think they ended up laying about 2,000 miles of optical fiber, starting at that point and working their way through. Since then, they've upgraded that in two other grants of 24 and 18 million dollars. So they're, by the time we got to the COVID-19 pandemic, even the rural areas were connected. And so, in retrospect, that was a remarkable thing to have put in place starting almost 12 years ago now. So, and that has implications to the electric grid, because now we have communication between the energy elements in the grid. Of course, the PV arrays, the electrical system itself, and now we have our first batteries in place. These are Tesla big trailers of batteries that they can use to do different things in the electrical grid. But one is, of course, to store energy. And then brings us to 2014. This is probably where you've probably know most of the history. I don't know, 14 years since they'd signed a 40-year contract with Tri-State Transmission and Generation, or maybe it's Generation and Transmission. I never remember those. But anyway, that's the transmission generation cooperative that handles cooperatives in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and parts of western Nebraska. And so they had increased the rates 12 times in that 14 years, from 2000 when they signed the contract to 2014. And so Kit Carson was, looking for ways to reduce costs, not increase them. And so, plus they had this local renewable generation limit of 5%, which, was starting to not make very good sense because the cost of PV was dropping. And I'm sure it's probably similar there. We live in a place with world-class solar potential and solar resource. And about this same time, KCC lost the contract with the Chevron Moly mine in Cuesta, New Mexico, which was about 40% of their load. So suddenly they'd lost that, and now money was becoming more of an issue, because what happens is your fixed costs remain the same. That's the cost of transmission, distribution, keeping the infrastructure going, whereas your variable cost, relative to that, was shrinking. So they had to do something. And so they were looking for alternatives at that point. 2016, the cost of PV was really getting down low, and they could see that the future was good for further drops in the price of photovoltaics. So Kit Carson develops a solar plan that called for 100% daytime solar, which ends up being about 41 megawatts by 2022, and negotiated an exit fee from Tri-State. At the same time, the 10-year contract was signed with Guzman Renewable Energy Partners as a provider of power. They're a power broker. And so they manage power that's available in the grid and assign it to the various customers. They were quite happy to help us increase our renewable energy at that time, and so it was a great fit. Communication with stakeholders and co-op membership, Renewable Taos was one of those, was established, and actually one of our Renewable Taos board members became a board member on the co-op, and so we had kind of more direct communication with the co-op in that way. Of course, we're all members of the co-op. That's the way the rural cooperative system works. It was set up during the Roosevelt administration in 1937. So in 2016, Tri-State requested its co-op members to sign a 50-year contract. So yet another incentive to leave. So, it just didn't make any sense at the current time. I'm not sure about the leadership at that time. They have different leadership now, so I think they're trying to round the corner, but they're in deep trouble at this point. 2016 to 2022, this time interval is characterized by steady growth of PV, our photovoltaic arrays. Started out as community solar. These were, basically parking lots at schools and parks that have, this sort of awnings with photovoltaics on them, small arrays, and people could actually buy into it. Let's say you have your apartment owner, you see this thing coming, you want to invest in it, but you don't have any control over the roof at your apartment, so you can invest in these community solar projects. And so that was an early, easy way to get started. The first major array was in Amalia, which is near the Colorado border. I don't know if you're familiar, passed down this way, but there's a town of Costilla you pass through on, I think it's New Mexico 522, and Colorado it changes to, I forget the name of the number of the road, and then goes through San Luis and Fort Garland. So same highway. That was our first, and then slowly, little by little, in various locations all around the co-op, wherever we had a substation, that's where they would look at, associated placing an array. And this was for cost reasons, because you didn't have to, you'd have to have a substation anyway. So if you had one existing already, maybe you just have to add a transformer or beef up a transformer here and there. But it was a quick, easy way to get going. Then in 2017, we had two local solar installation companies, PPC Solar, which is here in Taos, and Soluna Solar, which is down in Dixon. They're actually covered by a different rural cooperative, but they do a lot of business throughout northern New Mexico. A lot of these larger arrays, utility scale arrays, were too big for any one of these by themselves, but together they could form an alliance, form a company big enough, and then we had local construction, local labor involved with a lot of these projects. That's an important part of this whole thing, because that means more of the money stays in your community. Okay, so it was a very swift move to incorporate that collaborative. The most recent array completed is located near our county landfill, also our airport, consists of 15 megawatts, which is huge. That's 170 acres and includes 10 Tesla battery packs, call them mega packs, for storage. And then the last array will be completed over by Angel Fire. It's a 7 megawatt array, which will include 3 Tesla mega packs. So these are our first experiences coming up of how to incorporate massive utility scale storage into our system. So we expect a lot of learning to occur in this process of incorporating storage into our electrical system. The last payment was made. We actually ended up getting a loan for the $37 million to buy out of the contract from Tri-State from Guzman, and we made that last payment last month, or I think it was late September. So, it's like retiring a mortgage sort of thing. There was rejoicing on the streets. So that's behind us. Looking to the future, Luis has come out with the next goal. Second phase is to achieve 100% renewable energy for everything, all of our electrical needs at all times. It turns out that what we've managed to achieve now, 100% daytime solar, would be, we've met the needs of our electrical demand at solar noon or a few hours on either side. But as it gets dark, or as the morning comes on, we're not providing all of that power yet. It is an intermittent supply, So without proper storage, you've got to rely on external sources for energy. Taos is located on a high plateau, about 7,000 feet elevation. Therefore, we have cold, clear nights in the winter. We also have 4 ski resorts associated with our service area, and they use a lot of electricity in the winter at night. These large compressors come on to make snow. And in fact, our power demand, because of the cold nights, heating systems and everything that happens at night, our load is about twice that of our daytime load in the summer. And so we've got to find a way to make up that load. So one of the challenges would be to gain control of our transmission in the region. Right now, Tri-State owns the 2 lines that enter Taos. There's a 345 kilovolt line that enters from the west, and then another 115 kilovolt line that also enters from the west. The 345 terminates in Taos, and the 115 continues on to eastern New Mexico, supplying those communities with electricity. As if everything were coming from the Four Corners, our coal fired power plants to the Four Corners. But of course, those plants are closing. We're closing all of our coal plants because we can't really put up with the carbon that they produce. And so what's happened over the last 2 decades in the country is that a lot of those plants have been decommissioned and have been replaced by natural gas. So if you look at, the transition appears to be that of natural gas, in addition to our development of renewable resources, both wind and solar. The other thing we have in New Mexico, just like you do in Colorado, to the eastern side of the state, is we have world-class wind resources. So we're just now starting to take advantage of those. Actually, it's external forces, external investors that are taking advantage of it. I think one of our biggest arrays was supported by the Canadian Retirement Fund. And but anyway, what we're short on in terms of this renewable energy transition is transmission. And so we've got to get control of our transmission. We're fighting a battle now with Tri-State trying to get control of these lines. And of course, we're not on their top most favorite list after having bought out of the contract. And so this makes it all the more challenging. But there are ways, and you can only do something that doesn't make sense for so long, and then the tide changes. And so that's our current challenge, both to get control of that transmission, enhance and increase our energy storage capabilities, and look for creative ways to offset our seasonal electricity demand. One of the ways we can use transmission is, we don't have much of a cooling load here at 7,000 feet, but 15,000 feet lower than us is our neighboring community of Española, which does have a cooling load. So, electricity that we overproduce from renewable energy in the summer can be transmitted to those communities, or down to Albuquerque that has a substantial cooling load. So there are ways to get around it, but we have to get control of these resources. Okay, the other thing I wanted to share with you, I've been going through these podcasts from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I guess Emily's familiar with them, and maybe some of you have followed some of their podcasts. But this Public Power Part 3 Ingredients for Success episode I found was particularly pertinent to both our situation and your situation as well. So I encourage you to read that or listen to that. And I put together a little bit of a summary of what I picked up from that document. They go into quite a bit of history, which is interesting. So for me, I'm going to have to go back and listen to some of the, I think he starts out with this John P. Coyle is a lawyer out of DC, starts out with the 1932 campaign speech by FDR on the origins of monopoly power. At that time, they were doing a lot of research on monopoly power and how it contributed to the Great Depression. And so they were trying to understand this to a point where they could make adjustments for that. And that played a lot into the utility systems, because basically they are monopolies. You're not going to string, multiple wires in parallel. You're going to have one set of wires to transmit the power, and one power plant maybe to support a whole community. So how do you manage this? What's going to be a sort of a natural monopoly in an environment where we know monopolies contribute to sort of economic downfall. And so that's sort of the backdrop of this particular podcast. But I put some bullet numbers or bullet things together associated with that podcast. And so what's needed to gain control of a utility? And so this would be pertinent for you. And one of them is feasibility cost and benefit analysis. This is a high level analysis to determine whether or not one can be successful. I mean, it comes down to dollars and cents. You have limited resources, so you've got to understand what those costs are going to be. Ask, how will this implementation occur? And you have to get down to kind of specific levels here. Resilience to weather the common defenses set up by the incumbent. In this case, it's going to be Black Hills Energy, and they're going to use all the tricks known as the tools of incumbency. And there are lots of things to be concerned about there. You have to be sort of strong in your and steadfast and be sort of tenacious and try and keep the people who you serve, on target, in spite of the length of time it may take to do this. Evaluate and know the value of existing infrastructure. This comes down to counting poles, transformers, because the incumbent is not going to help you there. Even though they know exactly what's in the in their system, you're going to have to probably do that just because of these efforts to slow things down. Fight for payment of depreciated original cost. Okay, there was an original cost of whatever infrastructure you have in place, but that's going to be depreciated over time, and the incumbent will attempt to use the original valuation. They'll indeed use the depreciated costs when it comes to their advantage of paying taxes, or when it's going to cost them otherwise. But when it comes to a takeover, they're going to try and go towards that original valuation of the equipment. Winter Park was successful at municipalization. That's the term that's used for transferring to a public controlled utility. But they engaged in the leverage of working with an already established utility operator who were also hungry to take up their case. So you need help from the outside of what's going to happen in this transition. Who's actually going to take control and has the technical expertise to operate utility. He ends up with something called the secret sauce of success. He says, you've got to have the spread, the bread, the head, and the lead. So spread, he means providing an economically viable alternative to whatever the status quo is. So there has to be plausibility economically in your effort to change, or whatever you view you're going to. The bread, it's going to cost, so you need to locate financing. There has to be a financial source. In the case of Kit Carson, that was Guzman Energy. They had some pockets deep enough for us to buy out of the contract, and the willingness to sign a shorter contract to provide the energy in a reliable way. Head, committed local leadership to provide continuity, to keep the community cohesive in the face of all these challenges you're going to get from the outgoing utility. And then the lead, hire competent engineers and lawyers to do the work to make it happen. So final thoughts, get the best information possible, and don't take anyone's word unless you can independently validate it. And so you're going to hear all sorts of things, and so you need to sort of scrutinize where these people are coming from, who stands to gain what, and pad their recommendations accordingly. So that's about all I had at this point. The two documents I sent were there were two one-pagers basically. one on the sort of timeline of the Kit Carson experience, including, the next goals, and then one pager on this podcast notes. So happy to answer any questions or get a discussion going, or, I'm not sure how much time you have, but I'm here as long as you want.
Thanks. Thanks a bunch, Dr. Munoz. I think you're right on target with some of the many things we've discussed and thought about in this committee. I should have said earlier, we were missing a couple of committee members, one who still, I think, oh, he's here. Thanks. I should just kind of give you an idea of who's here and who's not. We're missing one committee member who's out of town. We also have present John Vigil, who works with Black Hills Energy, and Steve Andrews from the nearby community of Florence, who's a retired energy consultant, has been very involved with us and also with other related issues. And then around the table, we have John Hamrick, our chair, Doug Cohn, community committee member, Carol Dunn, community committee member. Boy, I shouldn't have said it that way. Kathy Worthington and I are both on the city council as well as being members of the committee. So opening it up to questions, I don't know who.
Dr. Munoz, would it be possible that we get a PowerPoint so each one of us committee members can retain this?
Yeah, I sent it all to Emily, so she's got it all.
Okay.
I forwarded it to everyone, but just a little while ago, so
Okay.
we haven't
Yeah,
had.
sorry, I got it early this morning, so,
No problem. That'll be good to have.
okay.
Steve.
Dr. Munoz, I talked with Luis Reyes a couple of times and did a one-page write-up on the Kit Carson story, and I did that back in 2018, and then I updated a little bit about maybe a year ago. One of the things that he mentioned was that at the end of the day, there will be significant savings, and the end of the day was at the end of the payoff of the loan. And that then at that point, you were going to have a decision as to whether you were going to lower rates or keep investing in more assets, capital assets to strengthen the system or do whatever. And I'm kind of curious what the decision has been since the payoff of the loan. Frankly, from the last time I talked with him, I thought the loan was going to be paid off at the end of June instead of in the end of September. So I don't know what happened there. Maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah, well, it seems like every time I talk to Luis, there's a little bit difference in, from time to time. And so a lot of what I shared with you, I did read your one pager that Emily shared with me, so I knew what you had included there. So don't feel bad if it differed from what I had talked about. I keep track of my bills pretty religiously. I have a spreadsheet going back 12 years of all of my, gas bills, electric bills. And so I can say, well, I'm a little different than some on the co-op because I've got about 3 kilowatts of solar on my house. So I was one of the last folks to benefit from, they had a state rebate of 10% that quickly ran out of money, and then a 30% federal rebate. So back in 2015, I took advantage of those. So I'm a little bit different. I get charged, I think, a base fee of about $27, and then the rate above that for whatever electricity I use. But I also have a Chevy Volt, which is a plug-in hybrid. It's got about a 18 kilowatt hour battery on it, so I can get about 65 miles on a charge. And around town, I never put gas in it. I'm charging it during the day with my panels. And most months, I think only 2 months out of the year, I'm paying extra, above what what I'm producing from my solar. So, and I've noticed no increase in costs. I mean, it's a lot of other people may have different opinions on that, that have been here longer. In fact, we were just at a meeting and they were complaining about that, and I'm thinking, gosh, I've never seen any increases in pay, but Luis catches it from all sides, you know. But we haven't seen any decreases after that's been paid off. What we have noticed, we had this massive windstorm around December this year or last year. And we had like 90 to 100-mile winds that came through and took out 90 wooden poles. And we lost a few transformers in that process too, just because those poles dropped and there were surges as a result, you know, arcing, that sort of thing, and lots of damage across the service area. They were able to come back in about a week from all that. And unfortunately, we were only out momentarily here at our house, but some communities were out for at least a week in the middle of winter. So it was tough, you know, it was, people were kind of suffering from that whole thing. And I even have a friend that had like 25 panels on the side of her house and couldn't run the electric motor in her pellet stove, you know. Now, I always thought that the inverters on these solar systems had sort of safeties behind them. Mine does. I can actually throw a switch and run on solar at about 1800 watts, so I can keep my refrigerator going and freezer while the sun is shining. But she didn't even have that. And I contacted the supplier and he says, yeah, some inverters don't have that capability. I'm thinking all of them should have that, you know, as a resilient factor when we have these power outages. So I guess long answer to your question, but I think what's going to happen is they're going to have a reserve fund, probably a larger reserve fund, to accommodate these weather anomalies that we've been experiencing more of, and the associated damage to our transmission distribution system. So does that answer your question, Ryan?
Well, sort of. I think it wasn't so much what might have happened to your own personal bill, but whether or not you knew if the rates either had gone down or were going to go down, or if the savings were going to instead be put back into investing in the system. And it sounds like it may be the latter.
Yeah, I don't really know. I suspect the latter.
Okay.
I haven't asked him that question. We actually had a meeting last week. He's to try and get control of this transmission. He has developed a relationship with it's Grid Alliance. It's a NextEra energy transmission company. They're pretty small. They've got about 18 miles of transmission now, and they want to grow. And we're looking at actually working with them on installing in parallel with the existing tri-state lines 38 miles of new 115 kilovolt transmission, which is incredibly wasteful, you know, but tri-state won't do the right thing. So I think the idea more than anything is to put pressure on them and say, hey, it's okay. If you won't negotiate on this line, we'll build another one in parallel, and there will be nothing running through that power line. At least the 345 coming to us. Right now, it's empty during the middle part of the days. So that's the sort of situation. I mean, we can't really get control of this stuff that we own. It's incredibly frustrating, especially at a time when, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I've got grandkids and I feel like we're on a time clock here, you know. We don't have infinite time to get this energy transition going. And so I find it just incredibly frustrating that we have to face those sorts of sticks in the mud, I guess is the best way I can put it.
Right. It's amazing in a way that in the current regulatory environment, the Taos has really moved a long way. Kit Carson, see, with all of the new solar arrays and so forth. I mean, that's to me, that's a lot of progress within that same regulatory environment, so to speak. But it helps, I would assume, that you have a co-op that you're
Yeah, it
working
does.
with and made those decisions to move in that direction.
Yeah, as member of a co-op, I feel like I have some control. With an IOU, investor-owned utility, the loyalties are divided, you know, I mean, I think it's as simple as that. And it's not, doesn't seem like it's an equal division between the two. I don't know. You could tell me more about that.
What is the customer, this is Kathy, what is the customer base of Kit Carson? Do you know offhand?
I mean, how
How many
many?
meters?
I think it's around 30,000. It's small. I mean, it's a rural community, everything's spread out, and their service area extends beyond Taos County. It's also includes parts of Rio Arriba County and what's the one over by Angel Fire? That's Clayton, I think. I can't remember the name of the county there. Escapes me now, but it's a pretty big service area for, you know, a small utility. And it's especially tough because, well, like you probably, there's a lot going through the mountains. There's a lot of forests. Our forests are very dense. There was a recent Forest Service study that said that, you know, prior to the 1930s idea that they're going to put out all fires instead of letting them burn. Because of that, the forest density has increased from 50 trees per acre to 1,500 trees per acre. And, you know, we just had the most devastating wildfire in our history this last summer, and we're still fighting for issues around that. I mean, it was immediately followed with some of the strongest monsoons that we've ever had in recent times, which was a bad combination. If you know about what fires do to the soils, and there's nothing to hold it. So it just devastated a lot of those communities, not just from the fire, but from the flooding that's occurred after it.
Was Kit Carson affected by that fire?
Sure. Yeah, we had,
Couldn't remember.
we had, let's see, probably not directly. I think it was on the edge. They were really concerned with the way it was going, but luckily some of the rains came in time for it to stop just before it got to really the large part of the service area. It was more of a San Miguel area, which is another co-op it's kind of a neighbor co-op of ours.
So Dr. Munoz, where are your Tesla trailers located in relation to your touristy area?
Oh, well, we only have 2 sets of trailers. There's 13, I guess, total. And 10 of them are at our largest array, which is over near the county landfill and the airport here, just, you know, 2 miles from the plaza in Taos. And then the other one's near Angel Fire, and it will be associated with the newest array that'll be completed sometime early spring 2023. That's the 7 megawatt array. And when I've asked Luis what they plan to do with those units, at first is peak shaving. But they can be used for a number of different things, controlling voltage, frequency. That's probably the most valuable use for them. And some of them may be cordoned off and used for some of that. And then, of course, peak shaving is valuable as well. But there's nowhere near enough for us to accommodate, you know, twice what our load is. We've you know, it's just a fraction of what we need to accommodate seasonal loads. So we'd have to look for a longer term storage. There is a project that's benefiting from some of the hydrogen money. I don't know if you followed any of that, but the government seems really keen on spending hydrogen money. I think it's part of the oil and gas industry trying to get involved in this blue hydrogen thing, which, you know,
Right.
doesn't make any sense from a technical standpoint. I think it's better to burn the natural gas than to convert it to hydrogen. I mean, you get more energy out of it, and hydrogen is a small molecule, so it's going to want to leak. It's the smallest molecule. So, and it's embrittles material. It's a whole other infrastructure to set up, a transportation system for it. But anyway, I think it makes sense in terms of storage. So I'm hoping they spend the money in that way, but Sandia, Los Alamos, they're in there. There's plenty of money there. So maybe it'll be an interesting project up in Cuesta. It's the old moly mine that is owned by Chevron. So they're keen on doing something positive for the community. And so that's happening. They've had a couple meetings on that so far. I haven't been involved, but early on, I think I had one master's student that did a project with NREL on storage. And, we did a lot of analysis back in the day, and it seems to make some sense. A lot of it's going to depend on the efficiency of some of the electrolyzers that are, constantly improving. So we'll see.
Any other questions or comments from the committee or anyone else?
I'll just, one or two things I think of, I didn't send out the link to the podcast until kind of late yesterday because of some things going on at home. And so folks may not have had a chance, other than I did listen to it, but I don't know if others had a chance to. Oh, Carol did too, great. It's really, I think it's really helpful. The attorney, John Coyle, I think it is, provides a lot of, as you said, a lot of context for how we are, where we are, and just what some of those basic issues are. And of course, where we are as a community is still, we're still pretty early in the process in some ways. One thing we have not done, and I don't know if and when we will, is our own feasibility cost benefit analysis that you mentioned early on. Certainly, it would be so helpful to have that and have an independent one that the city would commission, so to speak. But we have not done that. So, we're operating on a lot of information from a lot of sources, but we don't have that yet. Other questions?
I
Doug?
came in a little late. Did you have your system? Like Emily's talking, have a study done on your system, where it's at and what you would need? Did you have that done prior to, and who did you have do it? And the cost?
That's probably a best question answered by Luis. I don't know that they actually commissioned a study. I've never seen the report on a commission study, so I doubt that happened. Luis is an engineer. He's an electrical engineer, and he has, as one of his staff members, a man, what's his name? Martinez, who's his COO. He's also a power engineer. So they have, some pretty good technical expertise amongst themselves. Now I know they use also they hire consultants for, the detailed analysis. They've incorporated one in this look at Grid Alliance, they're calling it the Green Chile 115 kilovolt transmission project. I would have picked red, but
At least it didn't say hatch.
Yeah.
so I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that question, Ryan, but let me do some digging and maybe I can get back to Emily on that for you.
Sure.
I suspect-
Thank you.
And, yeah,
Doctor, when the Kit Carson took out the loan with Guzman, did they get favored rates, or was it pretty much just, I guess I'll just ask, what was it, a favored rate or was it market value?
All I can say is my rates didn't change. No, they didn't change. And I think the wholesale rates actually went down. So, Kit Carson is more than just the power company. I mentioned the internet company, the technology company, and they also have a propane company. And the propane company is actually for profit, which was useful because this last array that they installed, the largest array, is owned by Kit Carson Propane. And that's because they were able to take advantage of the tax break. Okay. Being a nonprofit, the cooperative couldn't take advantage of the tax break, but the propane company could. So that's another, sort of added benefit that reduced the cost by a good fraction. I don't know what it was then. I think the rebates were probably in the 20% range, 20-25% by the time they got, I don't think they were at 30 at that point, because they were trailing off. I think they've come back in the most recent legislation, but anyway, they did everything they could to take advantage of the federal funds that were available.
When is Guzman still happy with the deal? Because of all of the renewables you have added, I would assume that the wholesale amount that they're buying has gone down.
I think so. I think because of this publicity, it's not just us anymore. I mean, I think United Power, which is the largest cooperative in the tri-state, area, is ready to buy out too. And they're up just north of Commerce City, and they have kind of two plots, one in sort of the mountains, foothills mountains, and then the other one to the eastern New Mexico. And what was the western? There's another, La Plata's wanting to buy out. There's falling dominoes. I think it's going to be probably something that FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is going to have to pick up and take over. It's almost like these renewables have made the transmission and generation cooperatives obsolete. And it's happened very quickly.
Right.
I think they could have gotten around it, but with the prior leadership, the leadership prior to this one, they were trying to spend $2 billion on 2 large boilers in Western Kansas, and finally got turned down in 2017. Who does that? I mean, that made no sense at all. I mean, you could see what was going to happen.
Whole century.
Well, it is interesting that and I don't know all the details, but these buyouts, these co-ops, various ones with the long-term contracts, it's like, you just know things are going to change one way or another. And so the question is, does Tri-State keep up in some way or not? Does the FERC keep? I mean, it's really interesting. Delta Montrose is another one in Colorado that's made the change.
Delta Montrose, that was one I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
Well, when you listen to that, I listened to this podcast 3 times already, and I'm probably going to listen to it a couple more times, because I think at about 25 minutes, he starts talking about the obsolescence of having FERC look at everything. They've become sort of a bottleneck. Everybody's got to go to FERC to get permission to do this transmission line change here that really involve local issues. And so with this, what John Coyle is saying is, hey, it's past time to do that. And there's really precedents in place, has been for some time, to make this change. And so I hope that they were successful. And I think that's probably going to be some effort that I'd like to take on as Renewable Taos, at least to talk with our political leaders about, is to get that transition going, because there's just too much of a bottleneck at the federal level to make these sorts of decisions. They've got a backlog of years now on dealing with those things. And, I think we have an educated enough public to get our ideas across and take control of this stuff. We need to develop local expertise in this as well. So.
Is there anything, I was just going to mention one of the, and I'll kind of read my notes here, which may be a little imperfect to put it mildly, but one of the things Coyle talks about in the podcast is a community named Clyde, Ohio, that was a municipal electric utility until the 1960s. Then they changed and, went to an IOU, I believe, and then the franchise expired in the late 1980s with Toledo Edison. They had really high rates. The citizens said, let's go back to being municipalized. And so as part of that process, they literally built 10 miles of 69 kV transmission lines to another lower cost supplier, then rebuilt the distribution system within the municipality and still ended up with 35% lower rates. I thought that was a pretty interesting brief case study that Coyle talked about.
I think one of the things that we look at things a little bit differently here in Canyon City is the median income of our community is much lower than what I would guess Taos is perhaps.
I don't know.
No,
And
Taos is,
No, there's two sides to Taos.
yeah.
Like is, well, in even more, wider gap, I think.
Okay,
I don't know if you agree, Dr. Munoz,
can
but
I finish?
yeah, no,
Yes, sir.
definitely, yeah.
Because what
Go
I'm
ahead.
trying to get at is we're looking at saving money. And right now, going to be renewables is, I totally believe in it, but I'm going to tell you, this community just wants to get some lower rates right now. And so you have gone ahead and you're not seeing any savings yet, which I can understand because you're doing the ethically right thing to do. But if you're trying to look at immediate satisfaction and to satisfy our citizenship and Black Hills customers, it's not going to be renewables. And so I guess, the main thing is trying to figure out for us the best way to go to get a lower cost without having a lot of stranded assets and things that way. So we're just a little bit different in that perspective.
Yeah, no, we're at Renewable Taos, we're highly conscious of, our populace, and we do have a very poor county. It's one of the poorest counties in New Mexico, surprisingly, but I mean, it's this Acequia, that's how you pronounce that word, Acequia Association. Acequia is our waterways, ditches that were developed by the Spanish. And actually, when the Spanish came here, they found that the natives, the Pueblo people, were already using them, to conduct water from the rivers into the fields to irrigate. And, it's a way of really developing community resilience, I think is the reason I'm interested in it. Of course, I have water rights on the property I purchased. I just have 1 acre that, I built on. But I wanted to revitalize, work to revitalize this because I could see it was dying, it was, I don't know, there's another story, but, there are lots of people here that have lived providing for themselves on the land, up to the recent history. And so it's got a rich history that, we could talk about again, but I don't think you have to avoid renewables because they're more expensive. I think that they're some of the most affordable energy available. They're costly in terms of land, perhaps. I mean, if you have to use land. So, although some people are growing things in amongst the solar panels these days, as long as you can get here, you'd have to get water to it. Otherwise, it's not going to grow. But no, this is, I think I'd encourage you. What we're doing is trying to find out ways there's some new funding now to do weatherization studies and to weatherize, especially low to middle income folks. Right now, they're probably paying higher bills than I do because their houses are leaky. They have poor windows and doors. They just need some help with insulation. Let's tighten them up, make them more efficient. Then they're not using as much energy first.
Right.
I mean, the cheapest power that you buy is the power you don't use. So that's going to be helpful. But, there's a lot of work to do. I mean, it's just, it's mind boggling how much stuff there is to do. So, but you got to get started somewhere. I do have a question for y'all.
Sure.
Now, I just noticed that Pueblo decided to forego their public power and buy into a contract with Black Hills. Is that right?
What they were entertaining in the spring of 2020 was trying to break away early from their franchise. And that effort failed when it went to a vote of the people. And so they're still in the franchise another, whatever, 3 years or whatever it is with Black Hills.
To 2030.
To 2030. Oh, okay. I was thinking it was longer, I mean, shorter than that. So it was a franchise breakaway attempt that did not succeed, so that they're
Oh.
still in franchise with Black Hills.
I see. So they were with Black Hills and they tried to buy out and they couldn't or something, or tried to,
It was a public process. They put it to the vote of the public, and if the method, the proposal failed.
I see. Okay. All right. Yeah, I was
But yeah, they're
confused.
part of the service territory, which is part of all, well, John Vigil could answer better than I, but it's like, I think 6 different counties in south central Colorado that part or all of them.
Yeah, pretty close to 6, I would say.
Uh-huh.
About 100,000 meters.
I see. Oh, that's pretty big. Yeah. Well, hopefully I've answered some of your questions. Happy to,
Yeah. It really, it provides more context and more detail about what's happened in Taos, which is really helpful. We're just doing a lot of reaching out and learning from different, whether it's municipalized utilities or whether it's the co-ops or, just trying to learn from all of that. It is interesting that in Colorado, which is just, I think, again, supports what John Coyle talks about in the podcast. It's just very difficult to municipalize. I think the last community in Colorado, and Steve can correct me, was something like 1970, the last community to municipalize their electric service.
1974.
74, okay. So it's been quite some years, and we know that's because it's so difficult. And they're just, there's good points made in the podcast about both the state regulatory piece and the federal through the FERC. So it's just a lot of good information there. And it kind of goes back to some of what John Coyle says in that podcast about that it should be more state and local control on this, particularly to help with this transition that we all have to go through. Some of the regulatory system just doesn't work in this new environment now. But really appreciate your taking the time to present to us. This is really very helpful, and we'll review what you've emailed also. And if there's questions still, we'll certainly get back to you on that.
So thank you
Sure.
for that, Dr. Munoz. It really was interesting to hear you speak, and you're welcome to stay online if you want, but we'll move on now to other committee business.
I'm gonna have to go. I've got some other thing. Today was a big meeting day for some reason, but it was a pleasure to see you all and face to face, and let's keep in touch. This is gonna be a big challenge down the next decade. So
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
yeah,
Yep.
thanks.
Thank you very
you.
much.
we'll see you. Bye-bye.
I apologize. for cutting you off. I think my big frustration is they were already a co-op, so they had
Oh,
their
exactly.
feasibility
Oh,
study.
sure.
They
Yeah.
knew what was going
Right.
on. And so, and we didn't get as much info about Guzman or any,
Yeah.
any other. So that was my only frustration, was the fact that I admire what they've
Well,
done.
we could have Kit Carson present to us if we'd like, he's a customer
Sure.
and also involved with renewable
Yeah,
power.
Sure.
But he's not on the board, I don't think.
I think if you really want to know the answers to some of the hard questions, just get Luis Reyes on.
Right,
And he would do it.
right,
He's been amenable to stuff in the past.
Right.
He's come up to Colorado and presented. So
and I think that could be useful, both to get a better perspective of how that process works with a co-op, but also the specifics around their contract with Guzman and the loan that they just paid off and such.
Kathy's question about the interest rates that she
Yeah,
interpreted,
yeah,
and my question about what has happened since,
right.
which when I talked to him, I could swear he said it was at the end of June. So I don't know what happened, why the 3 more payments, July, August, September, but
Well, it sounds like they had a pretty big bill that they were trying to deal with, with all
yeah,
the poles down and everything.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be that they had to get some leeway or something there for a couple of months,
Okay,
fire and stuff.
so, moving on here, that's something certainly that we can, consider and maybe, that might be a good thing to look at doing after the first of the year or something, to see if Luis Reyes would, like to talk to us. At our last meeting, one of the things that we talked about was looking at Colorado Energy Office and what programs are available for citizens. They do have, I did go on their website and they do have several programs that are, and I think it was in terms of grants that we were especially interested in, or what our citizens, if there was money available for individual citizens. But I did look at their programs. They've got, I think there's 4 or 5 major programs. One of them is a clean air program. And what they're looking at there, this is really, this is more industrial or commercial type stuff, but looking at fossil fuel efficiency grants for, renewable energy projects, transportation electrification projects, but all of those are cash matches. So it's not that there is money available, but you got to spend money to get it. They do have a building electrification grants, but it's under process. They don't have the details of they have got a pot of money, but they haven't decided how they're going to either give it away or require cash matches for. But it does include municipalities. So that's something they've got under consideration. They've got a high efficiency, heating and appliances for electrification type issues, which does include local governments. And it is the purchase and installation of high efficiency electric equipment for space heating, water heating, cooking.
So that's
Like-
basically for like city buildings or whatever.
Yes, or the infrastructure needed for electrification. Those types of things, and that's also funding, cost sharing, how exactly they're gonna distribute that money is still under development. One thing that was interesting to me is they do have a geothermal grant program. And it's kind of interesting, but it includes local government. And we do have a geothermal resource here. It's not a real strong one, but they do have, and so if you have a resource developed and you're going to use it for heating homes and buildings, they do have I don't think it's cost sharing. I think it's just a grant. But it was not real clear on that. But for community district heating and geothermal readiness, they do have a grant of up to 100,000 for studying what you've got for a study. So that's one that maybe we can talk to Brandy, our grant writer, and see what.
Look at that, because it seems like if we could do something in the core area of town. that would be-
Yeah.
Well, that system at the middle school, that's geothermal, isn't it? Don't they have geothermal?
No, that's not geothermal.
That's a
so to
heat
speak.
pump
That-
situation.
it's really kind of heat storage or cool storage, depending on how you look at which season of the
okay.
year it is.
Okay,
They're just, what they do is they just circulate air through a
but
system,
it's
but
underground.
it's underground.
Okay,
Geothermal is,
is actually tapping
yes.
hot water.
heat-
Yeah, hot water, yeah. Oh, Penrose.
Heat from the.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well,
then-
we've got the one place out there at the top of the hill before you turn down to go to Walmart.
The old swimming
Oh,
pool.
true,
The old
true.
swimming
Yeah,
pool.
that's
Yeah.
true. On Village Road.
And was
there.
there anything down at this end of town? I was thinking there was something in the past, but I'm not sure.
I haven't heard of anything. I
The
knew-
pink house, was that,
I don't know.
I don't. think so.
Okay.
I
There was
don't know for sure,
a
but I don't
star
think
or
so.
something, but I'm not sure.
That's what we
They
need to
used to
study
dance
for.
one day.
Yeah, that's what we need to study for. Well, yeah, it was, yeah.
So, but their geothermal program includes design and installation. But installation, it's like a 50% match up to $1 million. So you get 50%, you double your money. Up to $1 million.
Very interesting.
So I thought that was interesting, and I think that was it. Oh, they also have 2 other programs, one for cannabis growers to look at different
City
ways.
gonna go into the pub business?
Oh, yeah,
That's our new city money maker.
No, it's,
That's all right, hey.
And microgrids. And the other thing they've got is microgrids. But that's for co-ops and municipalities.
Yeah.
Municipal, in other words, municipal electric. Companies.
And they don't have anything like he was talking about for like weatherization or anything like that. I mean,
the, yeah,
Not that I
level.
saw.
energy outreach office, which is different from.
Yeah.
that,
from
Yeah.
I
all area,
believe,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
has-
And the IOUs contribute some big bucks to do, like Pueblo County, I know that
Yeah.
we gave money to Pueblo County for weatherization and stuff. I'm sure Black Hills probably did too.
Yeah, that all goes to the energy office, and actually Pueblo County is the service agency
Yeah.
that provides the service in this area as well.
Yeah, I remember.
I
For
think,
Canyon too.
yeah, for Canyon as well.
The
They-
county government. too, is that what
Pueblo
you're
County,
saying?
yes, they do it for all of our service territory, I believe.
Plus rebates for up-to-date appliances that are more cost-effective and such like that, you guys.
Cost effective overuse, much more expensive initially. Yeah, but
Well, what is it?
Well, look at this program where they're talking about having to change your appliances in your house. There's significant cost to, I would suspect, each individual property owner or homeowner to convert over to this.
There's,
But there are grants and monies available to soften the blow.
right,
And
Well,
I
they
think
probably are.
that's, you know,
Yeah,
and for low, income, some of the weathers, as I understand it, and I don't have all the information, but I think some of the weatherization work and the funds that are available for low income people are just paying for those new appliances to go in. So it's kind of interesting. It'd be good to know more about that.
With
How
the, I think the Inflation Reduction Act or whatever it was that had that big, huge chunk for energy transition, among other things. Yeah, that source is now available too.
Right.
And it does cover full cost for some low income folks. Full cost.
through who or what, how is
Feds,
that?
I can't tell you where
So
the
the feds are gonna
the
bring it
feds
through
are
the
gonna
state.
make it available probably through the state.
Through the
Yeah.
state,
So
and it'll go through the
it's-
Colorado Energy Office.
It's still trickling down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I was explaining to Emily that they're thinking maybe second, third quarter of next year, they'll have figured out how they're gonna distribute those funds through their
It's-
communities, through the state office.
A government program. It takes
That's
forever.
the most I've heard recently.
That doesn't, that
Well,
sounds
then
like a reasonable fit for how
Right,
things work.
Yeah, I mean, it takes time, right? They gotta figure out how to build the program.
right.
And so that was what I found from the Colorado Energy Office. The next thing that we have scheduled is Jenny Heater, is that right?
Yes.
Is she scheduled? She is, you,
Right, I've
confirmed
I've
with that?
confirmed with her and I can reconfirm with her for
December
December 10th, is that the
12th.
date? Whatever the number is. If I could find it in my calendar, I could. Yes, thank you, the 12th. And I can reconfirm with her, just to be sure
can
that's.
you
the
remind me
word.
who she is?
She's with NREL.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
And
Okay,
has done
good.
a lot of
Yeah.
community, I don't have her bio in front of me, but community solar kinds of things.
please spell that.
Jay,
NREL.
Yeah.
you mean the name, Doug? Jenny, Jenny, Heeter. And before we end today, I think Kathy and I probably should say a little bit about the PUC hearing that we had.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And John was there too, so.
Obviously, yeah. It was kind of nice to go to one where I wasn't the one whose stomach was churning about what was being said about us and stuff, so it actually, the very few speakers, I don't know how many more, we left, what, about 5:30?
Yeah.
And stuff.
No additional
No
speakers.
additional, I think there was only like 4 or 5 that actually spoke. And, one of them was a union representative to make sure that, basically back at Black Hills, incorporated the use of union workers to be able to do any of the construction that were renewables and things that way. Another gentleman, and I worked with him, so I use that word loosely. He was very much into this distributed generation as far as local, maybe the micro generators and things that way, and only took him about 20 minutes to say it all.
With the 2-minute time.
The 2-minute
Some
time
of us
limit.
were here too.
And, he's with a group that is very much involved in trying to get more localized, gosh, like a generator at your house type thing. And I don't know enough about it, so I shouldn't be as snide as I'm being. And then another gentleman basically talking about, what the costs are gonna be as far as stranded assets that could be obtained by eliminating the using, and then the woman that Emily knows very well that again was talking about stranded assets like pegs and some of those that would not be utilized to their fullest, which we're already paying for right now. Is there anything else?
And I didn't take notes really, and so I think that's a good summary, really, so. Some of the
Maybe
things.
just to touch on a little bit of that, so.
Go, yeah.
The thing about the stranded assets is they were arguing that we're gonna, we're being asked to add all these renewables.
Mhm.
And that's adding to the kind of price tag of stranded assets because of this push towards the renewables.
Substituting what you have and
Yes.
adding something.
So I think the ask, what I was hearing, the ask was that they want the utility to that shareholders should bear a portion of the burden that is being asked of the customer because of the state's
Good point.
decision or requirements for carbon emissions reduction. That's kind of what I think I heard.
I think you're right, and I didn't think of that, yeah.
Interesting.
But I don't recall, as far as the actual, Black Hills actual clean energy plan, I don't remember a lot of other kinds of comments on that. Unless I'm forgetting.
Generally supportive of the idea, the transition, just not really in favor of the cost.
Worried
That's
about
what I was hearing.
Yeah,
That's a good summary, thanks, John.
I listened very carefully.
I'm sure.
did they do us kind of did they go to other communities to do the same thing? It
No.
was just Pueblo, and
It was
hoping
just
anybody
Pueblo.
who wanted to come in could come in. So, okay,
I was gonna go, but I had family from out of state and one of them got sick and I got sick and
Oh, geez.
things happened, so I could not go, but I had.
I would say probably there were more Black Hills employees than there were just us normal folk, quote unquote. So,
Yeah.
I'll submit something written.
Mhm.
with the commissioners, I thought gave very good, were very attentive. And I thought, I saw them taking notes and things that way. So I mean, they took it very seriously, which they should.
I was frankly impressed all three of them showed up.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Because some of them are traveling from the western slope and quite a ways. So I was actually impressed they all showed up.
And we did make a connection with a PUC staffer who was helping staff the event, Gail Connors, who's the section chief of media relations, outreach and engagement with the PUC. And she lives in Pueblo West, if I recall correctly. So she was interested in what we were doing over here. And we told her, hey, come to our
She's
meetings. Or
Worked for 18 years with Colorado Springs Utilities, so it was interesting. And She actually worked with my former boss while he was at Colorado Springs, so it was fun to just kind of
Mhm.
exchange pleasantries, so it's interesting.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Thanks for that. So we've got December 12th. And we've got. Look at my calendar here. And we have a meeting scheduled on the 28th. And so the question is, should we cancel that meeting? We got something that we need to.
I'm not gonna be able to attend that.
It's-
Kids are going back.
That's-
to
And I don't
school that
have
day,
it,
so
so
I'm
I
gonna be
probably
on
missed
there.
the last meeting, so I didn't get.
You're talking about December 26th.
No, the 28th of November.
28th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're
You're going backwards, gotcha.
well, good point.
Going forward.
We started in December and then went back.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So what do you all think about canceling that particular meeting?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Before we answer that?
Yeah,
What's the situation with meeting with San Isabel?
I don't believe that nothing has been talked about on that.
I think it's still hanging out there.
I think it's still hanging out there.
I was just in touch with Ryan Ellerton, who's the lead dog there, the manager. I could ask him if you want anything.
No,
Nope.
so then Christmas is the second meeting in December, so I assume I'm not gonna have to leave my turkey and come to this meeting. Am I?
Just turn the oven down.
Okay.
Save energy.
Monday, the 26th, is that what you're referring to
Yeah,
in
yeah,
December?
so basically it's Christmas.
You got a slow turkey going. I see.
So anyway, back to, we're eliminating the 28th.
Well, that's what we need to say for sure. one way or
Yes,
another.
that's fine with me. I don't
Unless
think
there's
anything-
something, yeah,
I don't think anything's come up, so.
okay. So we'll cancel both those meetings.
Okay.
And we'll continue to correspond by email. Kirk has got something on his plate that he's doing for all of us. So when he's done with that,
Yeah,
we can all take a look at that and chime in or whatever's appropriate.
Cancel which two meetings?
November 28th
Okay,
and December 26th.
And I've been trying, just kind of an FYI, I've been trying to just get a little bit of information gathering from different agencies locally in terms of serving people who are struggling with electric bills. I don't have much to report on that yet. There's more than one different funding stream on that. I did communicate with the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments person. I don't know if I have the numbers with me, but it's a pretty low number.
no.
They don't get a lot of money through there. They get it through the Federal Community Services Block Grant. And so it ends up not being much money. They run out of it before the end of each year. And they serve some families and they don't break out their statistics by type of utility. So it could be propane, it could be gas, it could be electric. So it's not, in terms of numbers, it's not very helpful to us, I don't think. But I'm still working to get some other information.
If I may just share, so there's a significant amount more money available for folks that are income qualified now. Because as I think we shared with you at a presentation, you have a separate rider on your bill today that is there to help supplement that fund. Those dollars are available through the Colorado Energy Office. And I've been told two things, either one, call the Colorado Energy Office, or two, and I've shared this with the city via, the pamphlets, the 866 heat helpline is the most comprehensive way for people that are struggling to get qualified programs. And so as I understand it, we just sent the energy office $1.7 million on behalf of our customers. That's available for both electric and gas customers of ours. And it can only benefit Black Hills Energy customers. So just know that if people are struggling, they should be
Right.
trying. They
That-
really should be, because it's out there. There's a lot of money
And I-
more than there used to be.
Yeah,
And I think a
Sure.
lot of times, the comments we used to always say too was, utilities can't help people if we don't know about it. And a lot of times, so people don't, they wait till they've gotten a shut off notice
Right.
to finally say, hey, we're having issues, and it's like utilities sometimes, or hopefully will help as much as they can.
Well, and I don't know if you guys are responsible for outreach as far as, you know, is there stuff in the electric bill? Cause I don't look at it.
Yeah,
I
we
don't
do,
know.
we do put things in our electric bill. We actually have, there's a little. Did you know thing area of the bill now, you know, we'll give some tips as well as we'll give some direction. Because the Colorado Energy Office is the main funded entity, they're really the ones responsible for the outreach. All that stuff's on our website, of course. And then I just remind you all, it's not just us. Atmos has
Oh, yeah.
the same 75 cents or whatever it is on their bill. So now in heating season, their customers also should be looking for help.
Well, I'm
through
sure
the-
there's information like at Loaves and Fishes and
Yep, and that's where they're going.
Yes.
That's where they
Yeah.
get funding from, is the energy office.
we used to take bills at my business, you know.
Yep.
And we had all kinds of information. That was through LEAP, but it's transition.
Yeah, it's kind of all the same
Yeah,
amount of money,
yeah.
but it all goes back to the
Yeah.
Colorado Energy Office or Energy Outreach Colorado.
Is Black Hills meeting all of their, goals for rebates and things?
You know, I think when I shared that report for you, I think I shared it with you all. We've had varying degrees of success. There are some that are not as successful. There are some that are wildly successful, like the small business component you saw. I don't know if you saw the article about Unbridled in the newspaper. Yeah, they had a great write-up about how it was super simple for them. They found it very easily. And they retrofitted all their lighting with LED in their shop and encouraged people. I mean, that was a completely organic piece. They encouraged people, go look, because it's pretty simple. And that is one of our most successful
The
programs.
lighting, yeah, because it's the
Well,
best.
the general small business direct install program is one of the most successful. So any types of, efficiency related to those. Because you hire a local contractor, they're very familiar with the program, they can tell you exactly what the rebates are gonna look like. So,
And just so you know, I checked back in my email, one of the entities that I tried to contact in regard to what we're just now talking about, assistance to low income. I sent an email to Energy Outreach Colorado on November 3rd and haven't heard back yet. If I use the email address, I think on your website, so you know how that goes.
if you dig a little deeper, Emily, there's program managers.
Yeah,
I don't know if you did that, but there's a specific gentleman, I can't remember his name
Okay.
now, but it's a Hispanic name,
Okay.
runs the energy efficiency program.
gotcha.
And one of the things that we talked about last time, at the end of October was that I thought Black Hills was gonna look into what is needed on Black Hills side for fast chargers.
Yes, so I think I sent you an email. I apologize. if I
Oh,
didn't, but,
well, maybe you.
I just said we're happy to come in and chat about that at any point. I would have Devin come in because he's the one that's literally on the ground with those.
Okay,
He goes out, looks at the system, determines what needs to be done. And if I can just share a little bit here,
sure.
what I do know is. So the interconnect fees that we collect from people who want to connect to our system. Those traditionally were part of our bottom line. And what we have done is we've allocated those to reinvest into other types of programs that make sense for both the customers and us. In this instance, it's electric vehicle infrastructure. And so as an example, with the city, we provided the in-kind work up to the point where the installation was done. And we provided those dollars, and then the city got the grant for the chargers. So they actually did it with no cost out of their pocket. And that's something we continue to do with customers and with the city if they're interested.
Good. I'll check into that. It sounds like maybe I didn't forward that email.
And I think Devin would probably only need 30
Happens.
minutes or an hour, John, 45 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
So you guys probably would have more questions.
Mhm.
If you haven't met Devin, he's a really smart guy and he's got a lot of knowledge. You could talk to him for hours.
Hmm.
I can.
I think that would be useful to have that, have it.
Yeah. We'll look at that after the first of your meeting. And I'll dig out that email.
Everything's on hold now, so,
No,
you know.
Yeah, it's holiday
vacation
time.
time.
always crazy.
You can't get a hold of anybody on the phone. Or something.
Okay, anybody have anything else for us to chat about here this morning?
Did anybody listen to the CPR? Story or read it?
Oh, the one that Carol and I were.
And Miguel,
Oh, did you get a phone call?
No, we're.
I got a phone call from NPR.
No, this is CPR.
Oh,
Yeah,
CPR. Oh,
Oh, no.
But anyway, yeah, they have a written story online plus the
Yeah.
recording.
did y'all get a link though? I could just
I
certainly forward it to you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think to everybody
I
here.
can't remember now, but I thought I did.
Yeah, I just curious.
49. 982.
Okay, well, if that's everything, then we'll see you in a month.